They didn't just fire her, they made calls, killed her visa, and tried to erase her from an entire country, and not one person in Seoul's most powerful legal circles lifted a finger to stop it. Because Jin Ho-yoon had built his empire on the certainty that a black woman alone in Korea had absolutely no one to fight back with. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, someone you gave everything to, I need you to hit that like button right now, because what Zara did next, and what Kang Seo-jin did for her, is going to remind you that the woman they try hardest to erase is always the one who ends up impossible to ignore. Stay with me, because the moment these two meet in that hotel bar is the moment this entire story explodes. The security badge beeped red. Zara swiped it again. Red. She looked up at the glass doors of Han and Kang's 34th floor and felt something cold move through her chest. She had swiped that badge every morning for 10 years. It had never beeped red. Ms. Osei. A voice behind her. She turned. Two men in gray suits. One holding a clear plastic box that already contained her nameplate, her desk photo, and the small potted succulent she'd kept alive through 3 Seoul winters. Please come with us. She went. Because that was what Zara Osei did. She was composed. She was professional. She walked back into that elevator with her spine straight and her face absolutely still while the city of Seoul shrank 34 floors below her feet. She crossed an ocean, learned a language, and spent 10 years proving she belonged in that building. It took them 11 minutes to decide she never did. The termination letter was 2 pages. Jin Ho-yoon's signature was at the bottom, clean and unhurried, like a man who had practiced it. Like a man who had been planning it. Gross misconduct. Insubordination. Misrepresentation of firm interests. Every word was a lie dressed in legal language, and Zara had written enough legal language in her life to feel exactly how carefully each lie had been chosen. She did not cry in the elevator. She did not cry in the lobby. She walked past the security desk where Mr. Park, who had given her a tangerine every Lunar New Year for a decade, pretended to be very busy with his computer screen. She walked through the revolving door and into the gray Seoul morning and stood on the pavement outside Han and Kong Tower with a plastic box in her arms and nowhere to go. Then she cried. Just for a moment. Just enough. For months later, Zara was at the end of everything. The wrongful termination lawsuit had stalled. Her attorney, a decent man named Cho, had called that morning with a voice that said what his words were trying not to. The associate who agreed to testify has withdrawn her statement. I don't know what was said to her, but she's not coming back. Zara had listened. She had thanked him. She had hung up and sat in her Itaewon apartment for a very long time. She had 2 months left on her lease. Her visa renewal was flagged, pending review, for reasons immigration refused to specify. She had sent 41 applications to firms across Seoul and Chicago. She had received 4 responses, all polite, all final. Jin Ho had made calls. She knew it. She couldn't prove it. She couldn't prove anything anymore, and she had spent her entire career believing that proof was the most powerful thing in the world. She put on her good dress and went to the Grand Hyatt bar because sometimes the only thing left to do is sit somewhere beautiful and remind yourself you were still a person. The bar was quiet for a Thursday. She ordered red wine, spread her visa appeal documents across the counter, and stared at them until they stopped making sense. She was so deep inside her own thoughts that she almost didn't notice the man who sat down 1 seat away. Almost. He ordered scotch. Neat. Said nothing to the bartender beyond the name of the drink, in Korean that carried a Busan edge. He was perhaps 40, with the kind of face that had decided a long time ago that it would not be easy to read. He wore a dark suit that had not come from any department store. He did not look at his phone. He looked straight ahead, calm in a way that did not feel like peace. It felt like control. Zara looked back at her documents. You're reading those, the man said quietly in Korean, like someone who already knows the answer but can't accept it yet. She looked at him. He was still looking straight ahead. She responded in Korean without deciding to. Maybe the answer is wrong. He turned then and looked at her for the first time. Something moved in his expression. Not sympathy. Something more careful than that. Tell me. She didn't know why she did. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was 4 months of holding everything so tightly that her hands had forgotten how to open. But she told him. The fraud she'd found buried in 3 years of restructured client accounts. The meeting where she'd taken it to Jin-ho and watched his face go from surprise to calculation in under 2 seconds. The termination letter. The calls he'd made. The lawsuit going cold. The visa. All of it. He listened the way very few people listen. Without preparing his response. Without looking for the place where he could insert his own experience. He just listened, his glass of scotch untouched, until she was finished. What was your practice? He asked. International corporate law. I specialized in cross-border M&A compliance. And before Seoul? Chicago. I clerked for a federal judge. Then 6 years at Pearson and Reed before Han and Kang recruited me. He was quiet for a moment. You didn't fail here, he said. You were failed. Those are not the same thing. It was such a simple sentence. She had no idea why it cracked something open in her chest. I'm Zara, she said. Kang Seo-jin, he said. He did not offer a firm name. He did not offer a title. He finished his scotch, set down a card next to her documents, and stood. Call me, he said. If you decide you want to fight. He walked out of the bar without looking back. She Googled him at midnight. Luxury hotel groups operating across Seoul, Singapore, Bangkok, and Dubai. A private equity firm with holdings in real estate, logistics, and what the filings described vaguely as consulting services across 4 countries. His name appeared in 3 separate government investigation summaries. Always adjacent. Never central. Never charged. The kind of man, Zara understood from a decade of corporate law, who was never charged because the people who might charge him had already made calculations about what that would cost them. She called her friend Amara the next morning. Amara had been covering Korean business from Seoul for 11 years and knew every shadow the city cast. The silence on the phone was long enough to be its own answer. Zara, Amara said carefully. That man doesn't get investigated because investigations don't reach where he operates. That's not an accident. That's architecture. He offered to help me. I know what that means when a man like that says it. What does it mean? It means he wants something. It always means that. Zara looked at the business card on her kitchen table. Just his name and a number, printed on paper that felt heavier than it looked. He didn't ask for anything, she said. Amara exhaled. He will. But Zara kept thinking about the way he'd listened. The way he'd said you were failed, not you failed. The way he had not once looked at her like she was a problem to be managed. She had sat across from Jin-ho-yoon for years and only understood in retrospect that he had always been looking at her like a tool. Seo-jin had looked at her like a person, and she had been starved of that for so long that even the possibility of it felt dangerous. She picked up the card. She called. He answered on the second ring. I decided, she said. Come for lunch tomorrow. I'll send you an address. The restaurant was in Mapo, tucked between a dry cleaner and a flower stall, with no sign outside and tables worn smooth by 30 years of elbows. The owner greeted Seo-jin with a bow that said something more than professional courtesy and led them to a table in the back where the noise of the street softened to nothing. He had a folder. He slid it across the table while she was still sitting down. She opened it. Her hands went still. 3 years of Han and Kang's restructured client accounts. Transaction records. Shell company registrations. Wire transfers routed through Cayman entities back into accounts connected to Jin-ho's family holding group. It was everything she had found. And then twice more on top of that. Where did you get this? She asked. I pay attention to certain kinds of business. He picked up the menu, calm as anything. The galbi here is very good. Seo-jin. She looked at him across the table. This is federal fraud. This is enough to do a great many things, he said. The question is what you want to do with it. And more importantly, how. Because Jin-ho-yoon has friends in places that will make a direct approach difficult for someone without institutional support. I had institutional support. He took it. Yes. Something moved behind his eyes. So you'll need a different kind. She looked at the folder. Then at him. Why are you doing this? He set down the menu. For a moment, he said nothing, and she understood that this was not evasion. It was precision. He was choosing exactly which true thing to say. Because, he said finally, watching capable people get destroyed by cowards who use the system as a weapon is the one thing I genuinely cannot sit still for. He paused. And, because you interest me, Zara Osei. You interest me considerably. The air between them changed. Just slightly. Just enough. Eat first, he said. Then we plan. They met 4 more times over the following weeks. Once walking through Bukshan-Hanok village before the tourists arrived, while he asked her questions about what she had actually wanted to build before DeAndre, before Jin-ho, before everything she'd had to survive had eaten the space where her ambitions used to live. Once reviewing her visa appeal at a cafe in Hongdae, his reading glasses on, a pen in his hand, making notes in the margins with the efficient focus of a man who had navigated far worse bureaucracies than Korean immigration. Once at a gallery opening in Hanamdong where he said very little and watched the room with the patience of someone who had learned that most information came from observation, not conversation. And once, standing outside her apartment building at 11 at night after a dinner that had lasted 4 hours without either of them noticing, he said, I want to help you. Not as a favor. Not as an exchange. Because your integrity survived something that would have ended most people, and I find I'm not willing to watch it go to waste. She looked at him in the cold Itaewon streetlight. That's a very careful way of saying something. I'm a careful person. Are you saying you want to protect me? A beat. I'm saying I've decided to. She should have been frightened by the certainty of it. She wasn't. She was tired of being frightened. She had been frightened for 4 months, and it had gotten her exactly nowhere. All right, she said. He nodded once, like a decision had been formalized between them. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow gets complicated. He was not wrong. The junior associate at Han and Kang who had originally agreed to testify, a young woman named Lee Seon, 3 years out of law school, one of the few people who had seen exactly what Jin-ho had done, called Zara the next morning. She was crying so hard her words came in fragments. They came to my apartment, she said. 2 men. They didn't threaten me directly. They didn't have to. They told me what would happen to my career. My family. They knew things about my family. I can't, Zara, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize, Zara said. Soo-yeon, listen to me. Do not apologize. Are you safe right now? I think so. Yes. Stay home. Lock your door. I'll call you back in 1 hour. She hung up and called Seo-jin. He picked up immediately. She told him. His voice on the other end didn't change in temperature or pace, it simply became more precise, like a blade being straightened. Send me her address, he said. What are you going to do? Make sure she's protected. And find out who Jin-ho sent. Seo-jin. Zara. A pause. Trust me. She sent the address. Then, 3 days later, came the letter from the Korean Bar Association. An anonymous complaint had been filed against her. Professional misconduct. Fabrication of evidence during her tenure at Han and Kang. The complaint was detailed, formatted, legally precise. It read like someone who knew exactly how to use the system to finish what Jin-ho had started. And then Amara called. I need you to sit down, Amara said. Tell me. Jin-ho contacted someone in immigration. He called your visa situation a matter of professional integrity. He's pushing for your case to be escalated before the appeal can be heard. Zara, he's trying to have you deported. The room went very quiet. He's trying to remove me from the country, she said. Before you can fight back. Yes. She sat with that for exactly 10 seconds. Then she called Seo-jin. He answered on the first ring. I know, he said. You already know? I was about to call you. Stay home. Don't respond to the Bar Association letter. Don't contact immigration. Do nothing until I tell you to move. Seo-jin, what are you going to? I told you to trust me. His voice was still quiet. Still controlled. But underneath it, for the first time, She heard something that was not calm at all. It was fury compressed into absolute precision. "He has decided that you have no one," he said. "I need him to understand how wrong that is." She heard something in the background on his end, a door, voices, someone saying his name with urgency. "I have to go," he said. "Lock your door." He hung up. If you've ever watched someone fight for you the way you spent your whole life fighting for everyone else, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happened next proved that Kang Seo-jin was not a man who made promises. He made guarantees. She did not hear from him for 2 days. On the third morning, Lee Soo-yeon called. Her voice was different. Steadier. "Someone came to see me," she said. "A lawyer. He said my legal defense had been arranged. He said I was protected. He wouldn't tell me who sent him." A pause. "Was that you?" "Not exactly," Zara said. "He also told me that if I wanted to refile my statement, the circumstances around my earlier withdrawal would be taken into account. That no one would touch my career for telling the truth." Her voice cracked slightly. "Zara, I want to refile. I want to tell the truth." "Then tell it," Zara said. "I'll be right here." The Bar Association complaint was dropped 4 days later. No explanation was offered. The immigration official who had fast-tracked Jinho's escalation request was quietly reassigned to a regional office in Chungcheong. 2 of Jinho's closest business allies, the men who had made the blacklisting calls across Seoul and Chicago, found their own financial dealings under sudden scrutiny from sources Zara could not trace and did not ask about. Seo-jin came to her apartment on the 5th day. He looked worn. Still precise, still commanding, but with something heavy behind his eyes that had not been there before. She opened the door and looked at him and said simply, "Come in." She made tea. It was something her mother always did, her mother, who had come from Accra to Chicago and made tea in a small kitchen whenever the world was too large to manage cold. Zara set the cup in front of Seo-jin and sat across from him, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "Is it done?" she asked. "The people who threatened Soo-yeon understand that doing so again will create problems they cannot manage." He wrapped both hands around the cup. "Jinho will find that his usual methods no longer produce their usual results." "What does that mean specifically?" He looked at her. "It means the calls he makes will stop being answered." A pause. "The doors he opens will stop opening." She understood. She let it settle. "You did all of this," she said, "and you didn't ask me for anything." "No." "Why?" He was quiet for a long time. The Seoul night pressed against her apartment windows, all that city light and noise held at a distance. "I had a father," he said finally, "who built everything he had from nothing. A business, a reputation, a life. And a man with better connections and no conscience took all of it in less than a year. Through legal channels. Through courts that looked at my father and calculated that protecting him was worth less than not inconveniencing the other man." He looked down at the tea. "My father didn't recover. Not fully. I watched what it did to him for a long time." Zara said nothing. She waited. "I learned," Seo-jin said, "that there were spaces the law didn't reach. And I decided to inhabit those spaces, so that no one who came to me ever had to feel what my father felt." He looked up. "You reminded me of something I'd nearly forgotten. What it feels like to fight for someone because they deserve it. Not because there's an angle." She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. He looked down at it, then up at her. "You don't have to do that," he said. "You've been carrying all of this." She didn't move her hand. "For me. For weeks." Someone should acknowledge that. Something shifted in him. The controlled surface of him. Just slightly. Just enough to see what was underneath, not weakness, but something far more honest than the armor. "I'm not used to people caring whether I'm tired," he said quietly. "Get used to it," she said. He almost smiled. It changed his entire face. Drop your location in the comments right now if you felt that moment, because it gets so much better from here. The Financial Services Commission formal inquiry was announced on a Tuesday morning. Jin Ho-yoon's name was in the first paragraph. Han and Kang's restructured client accounts, the shell company transactions, The Cayman routing, all of it was cited in language that Zara recognized as having originated from the documentation Seo-jin had given her 4 months ago, now arrived at the FSC through channels that were entirely, documentably legitimate. Soo-yeon's refiled statement was cited as corroborating witness testimony. Zara's phone rang before she finished the article. It was a partner at Kim & Chang, Seoul's most prestigious independent firm. Then a senior attorney at Lee & Co. Then, that afternoon, a managing partner at her old firm in Chicago. All of them had seen the news. All of them were, suddenly, very interested in Zara Osei. She thanked all three. She did not commit to any of them. She called Seo-jin instead. "Have breakfast with me tomorrow," she said. He was already at the cafe when she arrived. There was a folder on the table. She sat down and opened it without speaking. Business registration documents. Osei Legal International, registered in Seoul, with a secondary registration in Illinois. A 12-month lease on a Gangnam office suite on the 21st floor of a building she had walked past 100 times and never imagined walking into as an owner. A client referral list 4 pages long that read like a cross-section of exactly the international corporate work she had spent her career building. And behind it, a single note in his handwriting: "You don't practice inside anyone else's walls anymore. You build your own." She looked at him across the table. "You planned this," she said. "From approximately the 3rd time we had lunch," he said. "I was waiting for the right moment. You were waiting for Jinho to fall. I was waiting for you to be ready." His eyes held hers. "There's a difference." She looked back at the documents. Her name at the top of that letterhead. Her firm. Built from nothing and from everything she had survived to get here. "This is too much," she said. "It's a beginning," he said. She looked up. "Why, Seo-jin? After everything, why all of this for me?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because you and everything you refused to let them take from you gave me something I thought I'd buried a long time ago." He held her gaze. A reason to build something for someone else. A reason to care about what happens next. She felt it in her chest, that particular ache of something broken finally being offered the chance to mend. "I don't know how to accept this," she said honestly. "You learn," he said. "The same way you learn Korean. One word at a time. One day at a time." She laughed. Genuinely. It surprised her how real it felt. She signed the documents right there at the breakfast table. 6 months later, Osei Legal International had 4 attorneys and a reputation that the Seoul legal community discussed with the particular combination of admiration and unsettled respect reserved for things that should not have been possible and were. Zara was at her desk on a Friday evening, reviewing a compliance brief, when her phone buzzed. "Seo-jin. Come upstairs." She locked her computer and took the elevator to the rooftop of his Hanamdong residence, which she now knew as well as her own apartment, the way the Han River caught the light at dusk, the particular silence of the city from this height. The chair he always kept turned slightly toward the door out of a habit he never explained and she never asked about. He was standing at the railing when she came out. He turned. "I need to tell you something," he said. She crossed the roof and stood beside him. Below them, Seoul stretched endlessly, every street, every tower, every light that had been part of the city that tried to erase her. "I have not done anything in my life," he said, "without a calculation behind it. That is simply the truth. It kept me alive. It built everything I have." He turned to look at her. "I cannot find the calculation when it comes to you. There isn't one. There is only the fact that when you're not here, the room is missing something essential. And that I intend to spend a considerable amount of time making sure you are never again in a position where someone can take what is yours." She looked at him for a long moment. "That sounds like a declaration." "It is." He reached into his jacket and took out a ring. Simple. White gold. A diamond set low and clean, Korean craftsmanship, elegant without announcement. "I am not asking you tonight, because you are still building and you should finish building before anyone asks anything of you." He took her hand. "But I am telling you my intentions are permanent. And I am asking you to know that." He slid the ring onto her finger. She looked at it. Then at him. Then at the city below. I came here, she said slowly, as one person. I was going to leave as nothing. And instead, he said, you built something that cannot be taken. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure it stays that way. She stepped forward and kissed him. Not gently. Not tentatively. The way two people kiss when they have both survived too much to waste time on anything that isn't real. When she pulled back, his hands were in her hair and his forehead was against hers, and the Han River was gold below them in the evening light. You know, she said quietly, for a man who doesn't do anything without a calculation. I know, he said. I know. She laughed again. And this time it echoed all the way across the city. If this story reminded you that the women who refuse to be erased are the ones who end up building empires, subscribe right now and drop a comment telling me the moment that hit you hardest. Because there is so much more where this came from, and every single story is about a woman who survived, built, and found the kind of love that fights back. I'll see you in the next one.